Who's your favorite draft class? Well, Rob Rag's going to tell you, and I think we'll probably chime in as well today. Then we got to talk about the big picks, the sleepers, the ones that are super value. And then we'll talk just a touch about the process of the NFL, what surprised us about this draft as we take a recap with Rob Rang from Fox Sports today on Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I am your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back, Eric Crocker, and of course, as always, joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy, Rogue Analytics, and got Rob Rang joining us today. Of course, it's Thursday episode, and we all want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Exciting times, Rob. I haven't been able to talk to you because of a mishap last week with what happened, and I wasn't able to be on the show, but I'm definitely excited to hear some of your thoughts on this draft class. So we definitely want to dive in and get to some of your grades and maybe some of the things that surprised you. I do want to start with one thing and ask you what your thoughts were, because we've been doing draft grades on divisions, and I gave this team the best grade so far, an A+, the Houston Texans. I believe that they got a legit 5 starters. And I didn't think they just got 5 starters because it's the Houston Texans and they need work on their team and their roster. But I like what they did at one. Stingley, or you get Stingley, that's a starter. You get Jalen Petrie. I believe he'd start on most teams. And teams will bring him in to be a starter. You had Harris. You had Pierce, the running back, and running backs drafted in the 4th round. Like, you want him to be the guy. Feel like I'm missing. John Mechie. Feel like he can come in and be like a legit, at least 3rd option for most teams. So, what were your thoughts on what the Houston Texans did?
I love all the selections that you just highlighted, Croc. I'd also mention out the number 15 overall selection, Kenyon Green.
Kenyon Green. There we go. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, green is gold is an old Robert Frost poem there. And, and I think that it is poetry with the way that the Houston Texans were able to kind of build up their team. And just the fact that you mentioned all those other players, and I'll kind of, gush about Green here for a couple of minutes, just because I really think that the positional versatility that he offers that club, and what he did at Texas A&M, obviously as a relatively local prospect, I think that helps put butts in the seats. And I think that it also helps protect the quarterback. There's a lot of people out there who are kind of questioning the wisdom of the trade that Houston made for Laramie Tunsil. I think that if you put a really quality guard next to Laramie Tunsil, then he's more likely to be that much more effective. And that's exactly what I think the Kenyon Green is. And again, I'm a big fan of Stingley. Oh my goodness, am I a fan of Stingley? We're going to talk a little bit later about some of the surprises of this year's draft. I think the fact that you had a cornerback go number 3 and number 4 higher than we've ever seen the top 2 cornerbacks ever go in NFL draft history, that was obviously one of the big surprises, at least in my opinion, of this year's NFL draft just in general. But I agree with you, Croc. I think that the Houston Texans, I think that their AFC South divisional foes, the Jacksonville Jaguars, also had a spectacular draft. I think that when we're talking about the great drafts of this year, and I know this is low-hanging fruit, guys, but as you mentioned, Croc, we haven't had a chance that all 3 of us get together. The New York Jets, Jets, Jets. I thought that what they did was absolutely spectacular. The 3 first-round selections, guys, I thought all 3 of them should have wound up going in the top 10. And then Breece Hall to cap it off, and, another guy who I thought was a legitimate first-round pick, they get in the top portion of the 2nd round as well. I really think that we're talking about the AFC really was the dominant conference, not only on ability in both teams or both divisions and both conferences in the NFL, but I thought that played out on draft day as well.
I'm not going to argue. I'm going to sit here and I'll root for the NFC, right? I have to think that at the end of the day, it started hot and then it kind of went, but the Eagles did really well. And I have to say, I'm not used to using this team. The Detroit Lions helped themselves in a number of ways. They were bold not only in moving up for Jameson Williams, they were bold in taking Josh Pascal that I think you're going to have to find the right fit for, particularly in that scheme. I'd like some of their lower draft picks as well. Malcolm Rodriguez is an instant starter on special teams, and I think he will grow into a linebacker that you can get on the field, particularly in passing downs, and get something out of. They took a chance on HBCU guy in James Houston from Jackson State. Like, they did a lot of good things, but at the end of the day, come on, who are we kidding? The Ravens won this draft. There's nobody who did better at getting their guys, is there?
You think it was the Ravens? I still think the Texans.
I don't know. The more I look.
I like what the Eagles did too. You know, the Eagles, you talk about kind of what they did up front, getting big, you know, Jordan Davis to be able to play next to Fletcher Cox. Then on the back end, being able to get a guy like Nakobe Dean in the third round. I know there's some medical questions there, but just in the sense of, you know, getting a guy that if he is healthy, and I know there are some questions with him moving backwards and coverage and things like that, but man, against the run and running sideline to sideline and how quickly he closes in space, I think, I don't know, I like a lot of what they did as well, especially early on.
It's funny that you mentioned that because, Rob, isn't Cam Jurgens their best draft pick?
Well, he might be. I mean, I love Cam Jurgens. I mean, that was a guy that, you know, I was sitting in Seattle's, not their war room, but their media room, and kind of just saying, like, this is a guy that Seattle should be prioritizing right here. Center is a position of concern. I mean, you know, of course, Croc knows it very well, playing or watching teams in the same division. And then, Ryan, you know it also with a guy that was with Kansas City, Austin Blythe. That's who Seattle is anticipating being their starting center. Cam Jurgens was a guy that Seattle should have been, you know, prioritizing very, very highly. But, you know, again, to kind of go back to the conversation you guys were just having in terms of just the draft picks, I think that we got to talk about the Baltimore Ravens here for a second. I mean, just the way that Croc just kind of broke down, you know, all the different really good selections there for the Houston Texans. I mean, you look at Baltimore, Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, David Ojabo, Travis Jones. You know, to me in the fourth round, I thought that it was just beautiful that the way that Baltimore kind of set this up. You know, Eric DeCosta, he just recognized that this was a unique draft class and that the talent was going to be bloated. There was going to be a lot better, you know, depth in this year's class. So to be able to position themselves to have all of those fourth round picks, in my opinion, the sweetest of sweet spots in this draft, to have all of those picks. I mean, 6 fourth round selections, that's unheard of. And that to me just kind of shows the intuitiveness, the intuition of the Baltimore Ravens, that they were planning ahead for this. And I thought they just absolutely knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, they did a good job. And we're going to find out which rookies we feel are going to knock it out of the park. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the offensive and defensive rookies of the year. Can't wait to hear these guys' thoughts on that. But first, we definitely want to talk to you a little bit about Rock Auto. And with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need for your vehicle. All right, why endure often pointless and seamless, intimidating questioning about your vehicle and wait while this person behind the counter orders only the parts that their computer has, choosing only brand in a warehouse happens to cover. All right, you have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket, so use it. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. All right, why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. All right, Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything that you can need, whether it's brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even carpet. All right, and go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution for your auto parts. All right. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and right Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. We definitely want to thank you for making the Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. Locked On Network, man, got experts, local experts, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, all the sports, HBCU, covering conferences, all that good stuff. So, you know, they're local experts covering in 30 minutes or less. So make sure you tune into everything that we have going on. And speaking of going on right now, we are getting into Rookie of the Year, guys. And we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. I'll let you guys go first, and then I'll kind of give my opinion. But, Rob, since you're the guest here on this Thursday episode, who do you like to win Offensive Rookie of the Year?
All right, guys. So I'm going to mention a couple of players here. I think that you can easily talk about Kenny Pickett from the Pittsburgh Steelers because let's face it, we know that what happens when it comes to the Rookie of the Year voting, it's almost always going to be a quarterback. And who are the quarterbacks in this year's beleaguered draft class is likely to actually start? Well, that'd be Kenny Pickett with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So sure, just give him a little bit of a tip of the cap, but let's focus in on some of the other players. Ken Walker with the Seattle Seahawks, they didn't draft him in the second round to have him sit on the sideline, guys. I think that he has a chance to absolutely get the rock a lot and then potentially put up some pretty splashy numbers. So I think that you have to give him a little bit of credit. If we're going to switch to the strongest position of this year's skill position, guys, the wide receiver position, I think that Christian Watson with the Green Bay Packers, given everything that Green Bay gave up, 2 second-round picks to move up to be able to select him, his size, his speed, his reliable hands catching passes from Aaron Rodgers, you know that he wants to prove that he is not just Devontae Adams and a bunch of other guys. He wants to prove that he can be just as successful as other receivers. I think that Christian Watson is the receiver in Green Bay who is going to splash. But if you want to ask me, my number one guy that I think is going to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year in the NFL this year, Chris Olave, New Orleans Saints. Talking about wide receivers who I think are going to splash. Jameis Winston throwing the deep ball to Olave, sign me up.
Yeah, Olave is my second guy that I have. And yeah, you talk about who's there at quarterback, and you have Jameis Winston, and he has never been shy about throwing the ball vertically downfield and trying to fit in tight windows downfield. Whatever it is, he's definitely going to take his shots. And he might throw 30 interceptions in the process, but he's also going to throw 30 touchdowns in the process of doing that. And Chris Olave, I think he might be a big beneficiary of that. What do you think, Ryan?
I'm going to tell you you're all wrong. That's what I've been thinking all day about this, and I was going to go Drake London because his skill set transfers like that. He doesn't need anything else. He will take the ball away from defenders, but somebody's got to get it to him. So I'm going to take the dark horse. I don't think Mariota's the quarterback. I say Desmond Ridder is the Offensive Player of the Year.
Wow, that is a sleeper. That was pretty surprising, and I don't have Desmond Ridder getting it, but I do have Treylon Burks getting it on the opposite side of the ball. That's my guy. You talk about a guy who has an established veteran quarterback. They're going to definitely look to get him the ball early and often in the sense of how he plays and his play style. I mean, they were talking about him being like A.J. Brown. Well, A.J. Brown gets traded away. He fits in that role. I'm not saying he's going to be A.J. Brown as soon as he steps on the field and be that big-time polarizing receiver that A.J. Brown was with Tennessee. But I just think in the sense of knowing how to utilize him, the run after catch ability, the big shots off of the play action pass. I think there's an opportunity for him to have a very, very good rookie year, even though I think there's areas where he needs to be a little bit more refined with his route running and things like that. I wouldn't worry about that. I think he's going to be a big play guy. And yeah, so now let's go to the defensive side of the ball, and I'll start here, and I'm going to go with Jordan Davis, big guy. Again, playing next to a guy like Fletcher Cox. I like what they're doing on defense. I think he's going to be a guy that is, you look at, one, just how he tested. I think the way he tested, I think that shows up on film. A guy that's able to, chase guys from the backside with pursuit. I think if he could just add a little bit more in the pass rush game where he's getting some sacks and those numbers go up, that's who I think is going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. And you're not going to be able to double him because you have to pay a lot of attention to Fletcher Cox as well, who's also on the line playing next to him. So that's why I have. Who do you have, Rob?
Well, as you just said, Croc, I mean, I think that this all comes down to sacks. That is the flashy statistic that usually winds up winning somebody the Defensive Rookie of the Year honors. So I think that there's a number of guys that you could mention. You could mention Pickett with the Atlanta Falcons, the fact that they were last in the NFL a year ago in sacks, and Pickett, top of the second round, he has that ability to be able to just kind of feast upon a group of pretty mediocre tackles in the NFC South. So to me, he is one of those players. Sting, we kind of touched upon him with the Houston Texans. I just think that the ball skills on this guy are just absolutely incredible. I don't know that he's going to wind up being Defensive Rookie of the Year, but I would bet money on the idea that Derek Stingley is going to wind up being an interception champion in the NFL at some point in his career. I think this guy is absolutely going to be a Pro Bowl kind of a player. Drake Jackson with the San Francisco the 49ers, I think is a guy that really is going into a position to be successful, just considering all the talent that they have on that team as well. Sam Williams, Dallas Cowboys, another guy. But again, if I was going to go with a guy that maybe is low-hanging fruit, but Kayvon Thibodeaux, I talked about him all year long. I thought the people were kind of starting to sleep on him a little bit. He went from being overrated to underrated to wind up being the top 5 selection that he was the entire time. The New York Giants, Croc, you just mentioned what that Jordan Davis has next to him and Fletcher Cox. What about what Kayvon Thibodeaux has next to him with Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence on that New York Giants front? I think Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to wind up pushing for 10-plus sacks as a rookie. And considering the New York environment, how does he not get all of the buzz if he winds up playing that well?
Nope. You stole my guy. Thibodeaux is my number 2, but I will tell you, it is going to be a secondary player because I don't think any of these edges are going to make a 10-sack season out of what's coming to them. So who's the guy that has the best cast around him, both in his rookie class and what's already there? It's easy. He ran slow, and I don't care. It's Kyle Hamilton. He will make the most impact as a defensive player as a rookie.
I can see that. And one other guy that I forgot to mention as well, Breece Hall, running back, drafted by the New York Jets. I know they have Michael Carter there, but look at Breece Hall. And again, another guy. They didn't draft him in the second round for him to be on the bench. I think they want him to kind of be that bell cow, catch passes out of the backfield. It's going to fit that outside zone stretch that they like to do there, coming from that Shanahan type scheme. So Breece Hall, keeping an eye out on him. And I know just the place for everyone who wants to place bets, and that's BetOnline. All right. BetOnline.net is the number 1 source for all of your betting needs and sports information, including offense and defensive rookie of the year. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs that are going on right now, Major League Baseball scores, my Giants starting to pick it back up again, fights, and even next season's futures when it comes to the NFL. All right, BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting, the playoffs, esports, and much more. Head over right now to the website today and use their mobile device to learn more about the trends and action going on at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, y'all. So let's talk about some trends, right? We talk about BetOnline and some of the trends and action that's going on. There's some trends I see going on in the NFL, and I want to know if these things are going to continue. One, it is unheard of to see quarterbacks that got hyped so much, right? And quarterbacks get pushed up draft boards. Like, regardless of how good you think someone is or whatever, they go much higher than they typically are supposed to go. Well, that wasn't the case this year. Yeah, one guy, Kenny Pickett, going in the first round, who Rob Rank thinks is unquestionably the offensive rookie of the year. But after that, I mean, you couldn't find another guy, quarterback, going until the 3rd round. And even some guys like Sam Howell. What round did Sam Howell go? 5th round to Washington Commanders? So, that's a little unheard of. Are teams going to stop reaching for some of these younger guys if they don't feel like this is guys that's probably going to come in and play right away? Are we going to see this trend be pretty consistent of taking quarterbacks much later? I mean, we're talking about just a year after seeing 5 quarterbacks go in the first 15 picks.
No, I don't think that we're. I think that this was very much a one and done type of a year. I think that this was a year that the teams just recognize that this was not a very good quarterback class, and that next year's quarterback class looks outstanding, just like the 2021 crop was outstanding. That's why there were 5 quarterbacks that wound up going among those top 15 picks. Some would argue that the quarterback who was the last of those 5 quarterbacks going from the top 15 picks, Mac Jones, was the best of the bunch. I mean, if you look at his statistics, the fact that he was the guy that led his team, at least arguably led his team to the playoffs, certainly was part of the playoff.
The defense and run game was kind of good. He won a game where he threw 3 passes. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fair. But at the same time, I think that I don't think that there's a quarterback in this year's class who is going to wind up winning any games where he completes just 3 passes. Although maybe Ryan's right with Desmond Ridder. It's going to be interesting to kind of see that. But going back to your initial point here, Eric, I just don't think that you are going to see teams adopt this strategy moving forward. I think that they are certainly going to always prioritize the best players available. And it just so happened that quarterbacks was not that case. What was the case this year is cornerbacks and wide receivers. We saw a record class of cornerbacks come off the board, at least in comparison to the way things have gone over the last 20 years. Absolutely spectacular number of cornerbacks. I mentioned number 3 and number 4 overall. You just look at the entire class as a whole, it stacks up to any class that we've ever seen. The wide receiver class, it's even easier. 6 wide receivers among the first 18 picks. That's never happened. We saw double that, 13 actually wind up going by the end of the second round. That's never happened. I mean, I think that is just a reflection about both receiver and quarterback that, hey, mamas, allow your sons to grow up to be wide receivers and quarterback because they're going to get paid. And the NFL teams don't want to pay you. So they're going to draft players at those positions because they want to be able to pay the young guys rather than overpay on those second contracts.
And I think that's going to speed up. And Croc, I'm glad you brought up the quarterbacks first, because this was the topic that is simultaneously 2 different things for me. One, this is renewing my faith in the NFL, at least in the front offices, because they stuck to their evaluations for the first time in a long time. And it's a lesson learned for me because I let myself do the normal thing, get carried away, and I pop guys up figuring the NFL's going to ignore the evaluations. They're going to take them early anyway. So for my process, evaluating the evaluators, now I have to say, wait, there's a lot of younger GMs. I think the GM average age, the mean age of the general managers in this league fell by 5 years in the last 3 seasons. That's significant. And I think that's part of what we're getting here. That's why we're seeing, I think, the rush on the wide receivers. I think that's going to balance itself out as well. And for me, now I have to keep in my brain for next season, who's going to make sure that they stick to their guns again? And how much pop-up is there going to be? This class is drastically different in 2023. The quarterbacks are going to be, there could be 5 in the top half of the draft, of the first round.
We'll definitely see if that happens. But one thing I kind of want to bring a little context here, or maybe something that people aren't really thinking about, right? And Davis Mills, he's kind of the forgotten guy in the 2021 class because, well, he wasn't a first-round pick. So everyone talks about the Trevor Lawrences and Justin Fields, Trey Lance and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson and all those guys. They've gotten all the love on social media. Who's going to be the guy to take that second-year jump? They're talking about all those guys. They're not talking about Davis Mills, who might have been the second-best rookie quarterback in all of the class in the sense of how well he played, some of the things he did, the trajectory of it. And they're not talking about him that way because he's a third-round pick. But if you're a team and you see what Houston was able to do and you see how he played in comparison to the other guys, well, why not maybe kind of wait and see if there's a guy that you can maybe groom? So, you see what the teams did this year. I think, man, is that the better way to go about it? Rob, you talked about the receivers. And I think that is going to be something, again, talking about trends here. Our team's going to be going away from paying receivers the big money. And, I mean, you see one, Hollywood Brown, I think he was traded for a different reason. It seemed like he just didn't care for how he was being utilized. But you did see Deebo Samuel be a little upset. And it's like, hey, I think it's a money issue. You see A.J. Brown. I mean, Tennessee and A.J. Brown, they weren't even close with the money at all. They were talking about them offering $16 million per year. It's like, bro, no way am I taking that. All right, so I think those are definitely some trends there that I'm curious to see how those things continue to play out.
Yeah, I think that in the case of Davis Mills, I mean, I think that the Houston Texans just wound up getting themselves a quarterback who, if he had not have the durability issues that he had at Stanford, then he would have wound up being drafted earlier. And I think for all of the hype that we saw the other quarterbacks, people who were paying attention, I think saw Davis Mills kind of slowly but steadily kind of improve his play throughout this rookie season. So kudos to the Houston Texans, Nick Caserio and Lovie Smith for kind of sticking with their guns. And as Ryan was saying before, not falling in love with the upside of these quarterbacks and kind of biting at the cheese, so to speak, just kind of believing in what you already have on the fold. I think that Davis Mills would have been available in this year's draft class, guys. We might be talking about 2 quarterbacks going in the first round. I think the talent is legitimate, and it's just been the durability factor with him. So I think that is something that we can expect to see that trend continue, that if teams feel that they can get a guy in the second and third round at the quarterback position, the money and the ability to be able to get another impact player earlier on, that just makes too much sense not to continue if you can pull it off.
And that's probably better for a lot of these young prospects. So you have the ability to kind of just develop at your own pace, and they're not a rush to where, right away you have to be the guy. Obviously, I cover the San Francisco 49ers. If you're watching on YouTube right now, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel. But you see the 49ers has behind me, and they drafted the quarterback number 3 overall last year, Trey Lance, and they traded up a lot of and used a lot of draft capital to get him. Well, he's expected to come in, and if he doesn't make the playoffs with his team, it's like, he's a bust. And that's tough for these young guys. So they don't truly have the opportunity to kind of sit and really learn the game and be able to kind of master it. And coaches are forced to have to play guys, much sooner, as opposed to let them sit and let things happen a little bit more organically like we've seen in the past. But, you have guys like Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and some of these guys who have, been very good early on. And now guys have to play much, much earlier, and the expectations are much higher. I think it's a little unfortunate, but we'll see which one of these trends continue to stick. Rob, definitely want to thank you for joining us on today's podcast. And we want to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Once again, we will be back tomorrow to talk NFC East and break down all the draft grades for the Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, and what's the last?
Washington Commanders.
Washington Commanders, of course, the Washington Commanders. But until next time, we will see y'all. We are out. Peace.